And this is your Pho Dac Biet, Thai, Nam, Lung, or Ying. I mean, this is the ultimate recipe for Vietnamese pea. Now say it with me. Pho. Hey guys, welcome back to Hell's Kitchen. Today we are making Vietnam's national dish, Pho. And this for me is something that is one of my absolute favorite things to eat in the whole wide world. And growing up, I would eat pho anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's homemade, a hidden joint, or a hole in the wall. I would just like to taste and try and experience different types of pho wherever I go. It doesn't matter if it's a different city or in Vietnam. Now, as you guys can see from the title, and this is the only time that I will ever use the B word. Now, it doesn't matter if it's your mom, your grandma, your auntie, your uncle, your grandpa. Everyone thinks they have the best pho, restaurants included. Shout outs to all the grandpas and uncles and young chefs out there that are still trying to perfect this craft. And so, the reason why I named this How to Cook the Best Pho is with the 512 million possibilities presented to you guys today, you too can cook the best pho for your liking at home. So first, let me explain. Today we're gonna go through some of the techniques that most experts and chefs agree on, and some of the techniques that are so mind-boggling that it might break some strong relationships. Let me give you guys some examples, like how long should pho broth take? Use rock sugar, regular sugar, char the onion, bake the onion. There are many different possibilities that are debatable in the pho world. If you like hoisin sauce and you drench this in your pho broth, please swipe left. Now let's go through some of the ingredients. Now don't worry, everything is listed down below in the description, so you can just copy and paste and head straight to the supermarket. Ding! Now these are the 3 things that I highly recommend you getting if you are cooking pho for the first time. The first thing is a skimmer. This will help you skim all the residue and impurities while you're making your pho broth, and this will make life a whole lot easier. If you don't have this, you can use a regular ladle. This is a noodle strainer. You just use this to, when you're working with pho noodles, it's easier to get all the noodles out. And this is a cheesecloth bag. This is what I'm going to use to put all my roasted herbs and spices in the bag, and I'm going to drench this in the pot, and it's a lot easier to extract all these herbs and spices while it's in the bag. So today we are making the most basic Pho Dac Biet. The most basic is going to be Thai, which is your eye of round, Nam, biscuit, beef brisket, Lung, this is your tendon, and Bò Vinh, beef balls. Now some of you guys are probably asking, hey Hell, where's the tripe? Now, first of all, I'm not a big fan of tripe in my pho, but second of all, more importantly, I've never actually seen tripe in a bowl of pho in Vietnam, in Saigon anyways. So that's another question for debate. So today we are working with a 10-liter pot with about 9 liters of broth, just so that everybody's on the same page. First off here, I have 2 pounds of beef knuckle. This is your most common type of beef bones used for pho. Now this I have here, 1.5 pounds of beef oxtail. This is something that I just like to put in my pho for extra flavor. And today we also have beef bone marrow. Beef bone marrow cut 2 ways. If you're gonna get this from your butcher, I would recommend cutting it sideways like this way instead of this way, just because it's gonna be better presented for pictures for Instagram, or better presented on your bowl of pho. Now these are the 3 most common types of beef bones used in broth. So I've seen people use beef short ribs, and that works wonder as well. This is just 1 pound of beef tendon. This takes a very long time to tenderize, so this also will go in the broth. And this is beef brisket, the Nam. This is gonna be an item that you're gonna cook for a little bit and then slice it as a topping. And this is beef eye of round. This is your very most common Pho Thai. And last but not least, of course, beef balls. So another item that's hidden from here that is also debatable is daikon, gosang. Now, I've used daikon before and I kind of like it in my pho, but because I have a smaller pot and for what it's worth and how much space it takes up for the pho broth that we're using or we're making, I just don't see that it's worth it. So that's up for debate. I mean, if you have a big pot and you're using one daikon, that should work perfect for you. But we have a smaller pot, so I'm not going to use daikon today. Now, these are the main herbs and spices that most experts can agree on. Now, obviously, you guys know there's a bunch of other herbs and spices that people put, and that's also something up for debate. First, here we have 3 cinnamon sticks, 3 pieces of black cardamom, 1 tablespoon of cloves, 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds, 5 pieces of star anise, 1 tablespoon of coriander seeds, and 1.5 tablespoons of white peppercorn. Now what is this, you ask? This is actually a pre-packaged beef pho flavoring. Now this works good as well if you're lazy, if you don't have time, or if you just have excuses for everything in life. But this works too if you're trying or your first time making pho. But if you want to make everything from scratch, I highly recommend buying this and trying it out for yourself. Now finally, we can go to most of the items that most people can agree on. First off, I have rock sugar. So you're gonna need about 50 grams of this, or about 2 ounces of hard rock sugar. So you're gonna need about 3 to 4 of these packages for your pho broth or your pho pot. I have fresh pho noodles here. You could buy the dry one, that works good too. Now why do I have 2 kinds? Most people will buy this, bánh pho tươi. Now this is the regular pho noodles that you're gonna see almost everywhere, I would say, in North America. Now this is pad thai noodles. The reason why I like this better, because this gives it a better texture, because it's flatter and thinner, it makes me feel like I'm eating the same pho noodles when I'm in Vietnam, because this is going to give me the best and most consistent results as the pho noodles in Vietnam. Again, that's up for debate on which pho noodles you like better. We are going to need 2 white onions, a big piece of ginger, a small piece of ginger, a couple limes, some red chili peppers. This I have some cilantro, a bunch of green onions. This is cilantro. Now if you find this in a pho restaurant, you're eating at a pho restaurant, you see this on the as a side dish, as a garnish, you're at the right place. Now this is just your regular basil. You're gonna see this everywhere. Regular Thai basil and bean sprouts. Also, another thing up for debate, I have some fish sauce here, some nước mắm Phú Quốc. This is also up to debate. You could ask your mom, your grandma, your grandpa, do they put fish sauce in their pho? We'll find out later. So this here I have some cilantro. So we're gonna just cut off the ends here. Cilantro and green onions, I'm gonna want like a 2-to-1 ratio. 1 part cilantro, 2 part green onions. So I'm actually probably not gonna use all of this, but you wanna cut this nice and dice it really fine. We're talking like 1/2 centimeter fine. So you want this like that, and we want 1 part of this. Wah! Ha! Now green onions, cut off the ends and dice it fine. You want to save the ends here, the very end, but you want to cut off the tip here. And you want to save this to drench it in fat later. Some people like to eat this whole in their pho bowl. And a little bit under 2 parts green onions. And you want to give that a good mix. Now the red chili peppers, I'm going to leave this whole until tomorrow. And the lime I'm going to leave whole till tomorrow. And the ginger, this small piece of ginger here, I'm gonna put in the broth for cleaning the bones. So we're gonna cut this into small chunks and we're gonna dump this when we clean the bones only. Now this big piece here and this big chunk of onion here, a lot of times people are gonna char it over a charcoal grill, but we don't have access to that. I could put it on the stove, but it doesn't really look that presenting right now. So I'm gonna try to bake it. It should have the same effect and it's a lot easier to do. So we're gonna wrap this in tin foil and we're gonna bake it for about 15 minutes. But first I wanna cut off these ends here and just chuck this away. There you go. Now, my small piece of onion. This is the last garnish for your bowl of pho. So we're gonna cut this up and we are gonna dice it. I like it the thinner the better. That's also debatable. So we're gonna slice it as thin as possible here. What you should do is char this over a charcoal grill or some type of heat. I could put this directly on the stove too, but it doesn't really look that presentable. So today, I'm going to bake it. All you're gonna do is wrap this in aluminum foil and we're gonna bake it for about 15 minutes at 350 Fahrenheit. Now the first step that I hope everybody can agree on is we have a boiling pot of water here. Now I'm gonna dump in some sliced ginger and a dash of salt. And we are gonna clean the bones. So I'm gonna boil all of the bones. I'm gonna dump all the bones in here and I'm gonna boil it for 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes to clean all the impurities and get rid of the gunk and the blood and all the nastiness that you don't want in your pho broth, and you want your pho broth to be clear. As for the beef brisket, this I'm actually gonna dump into a separate container here. And I'm gonna drench it in salt for about 2 to 3 hours just to get rid of all the blood. And at the end, I'm gonna repeat this cleaning process. I'm gonna boil it in water again for about 10 minutes and then I'll dump it in my pho broth at the end for the last 2 to 3 hours. I find that if you dump this in the pho broth too long, the meat is gonna be very mushy and too soft. So 2 to 3 hours for beef brisket is good enough in my opinion. Now I hope that everybody can agree that you need to wash the pot. Washing the pot clear, nice and clean after this step is one of the most important things in making pho. You want to wash all this nastiness away and have a clean pot. So now I have a brand new pot of water and my bones are washed. As a good base, I'm gonna put in 2 tablespoons of salt just to get it going. Later on, I'm gonna adjust to my liking with fish sauce also. And a good base, I'm also gonna add the first ounce of hard rock sugar and just to get the pho broth going. Now, also debatable, and I hope that most people can agree that we are gonna cook this on low heat overnight. Now, some people will cook it for 2 hours, some people will cook it for 24 hours. Me personally, I just like it just right around 10 hours overnight. 8 to 10 hours I find is a nice and sweet spot for this. Now the water might reduce down a little bit, but later I'm gonna put on my brisket when there's about 2 to 3 hours left. Ah, look at this. So see what I'm just skimming all this dirt and nastiness, all this ugliness, the fat away. Voila! If I was to put this on a char or a grill, there would be some black burnt parts that I have to peel out, but because I baked it, it's still nice and fresh, so I can just drop this straight into the pot. Now, as for the ginger, what I want to do is I want to give it a good smash to release some of the flavor. And this should be good enough. And we're gonna go dump this into the pot. So now that my pot is boiling, I'm gonna turn it down to minimum heat, the lowest possible, and cook this overnight. Of course, I'm gonna skim all this nastiness out. And we're gonna dump the onion and the ginger in. So right here I have a pan over medium heat, guys. First what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roast most of the bigger herbs and spices here for 30 seconds over medium heat. So we're just gonna give it a nice roast. And then after 30 seconds, I'm gonna put in the rest of the herbs and spices and roast it for another 30 seconds on medium heat, just to bring out the flavor. And after this, I'm just gonna dump it into my cheesecloth bag here. So you wanna tie this nicely so nothing gets out of here. Is I'm gonna pour hot boiling water over this herb mix, and I'm gonna let it soak for about 10 minutes just to get some of the color out. So your broth should be a nicer color after this 10-minute step. Just let it soak, and then after this you dump it into the pot. So now this step is super debatable and can make or break some relationships, but the question is, when and how long do you put the spice bag in for? Now, for me, I like a super beefy bowl of pho. I don't really care about the color or how dark it is, so I'm actually gonna put this bag right at the beginning when I start my broth, and this bag is probably gonna go in for at least 6 hours. Now after 2 hours, I'm gonna take out the ginger and onion. Now if you want a super clear broth, a lot of times I hear that people will put this in 2 or 1 hour before they eat the pho. If you put this in for too long, it can darken your pho broth. This really depends on you and what team you're on. So it's very important not to cover the pho broth overnight. You don't want to cover this with a lid. You just want to leave it out in the open, and you want to leave a little bit of the fat here. So you guys remember this brisket piece here? What I did was I soaked this in salt water for a couple hours to suck out the blood, and then now I'm going to boil it in boiling water for 20 minutes to clean it and cook it. This is just boiling water with a little bit of ginger and salt. And after I clean it again, after the 20 minutes of cooking, then I'm gonna dump it into my pho broth for the last 2 hours, and it should be ready to go. Okay guys, so it is the day after. I put in this brisket for about 2 hours already, and it's ready for cutting. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out the brisket and the tendon and get it ready for slicing for the meats later on. I'm gonna throw this right into a cold bath water right away so the meat doesn't darken. Oh, look at this soft tendon. It's ready to go now. Look how soft this is. You can feel that. Yeah. Gotta find the other piece. We reduced down the broth a little bit. Now another question up for debate is, do you add more water to the broth? Now, if I was going to add water, please add boiling water into the pot. And most people can agree that if you're gonna add more water to the pot, please add boiling water, not cold water. But for me, I like the way it is. I don't want to dilute it. I'm just gonna leave it. So now it is time to come to season my pho broth. First, I got the other ounce of rock sugar, so I used 2 ounces in total. And I'm gonna use about 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. Now this is for your liking. Add as much as you guys want. It really depends on you. And I've already added 2 tablespoons of salt already into the pho broth in the beginning, and 1 ounce of rock sugar. Now I'm gonna add another tablespoon of salt. So in total I used 3 tablespoons. I'm gonna get a little bit of pho broth in here. Mix this all up. Stir this. And then we're gonna dump this into the pot for flavoring. Now the real question up for debate, guys, is does MSG belong in pho? That is one of the biggest debates that we could have back and forth. But for me, I'm gonna be team no MSG. You can put MSG to try it out. It might improve your pho taste. But for me, I'm gonna be on team no MSG. And the way you guys season your pho broth, it really depends on you, how much sugar, how much rock sugar you want to put in there, how much fish sauce, and how much salt, and all the herbs and spices. That is really dependent on your liking, and that's the way you're gonna make the best pho for you and your family. Ta-da! Hey guys, it's early in the morning and now we're gonna prepare some of the meat as toppings for our pho. First, the ball bean. So ball bean or beef balls, I'm gonna want this into a third, a nice bite-sized pieces. You cut it in half, it's really up to you, or I've seen people really cut these into really small chunks too. That works too. Just bite-sized pieces. My ball bean, I'm actually gonna put it into the same boiling pot of water that I'm gonna cook the noodles with and not the pho broth, just because I think it's gonna dilute it and also dirty the pho broth. The tendon. Our tendon is now soft. It's been about like 10 hours, so look how soft this is now. Oh. And the tendon, I'm just gonna prepare it and cut it, slice it thin. And this will be another topping for our pho. Look at this. It's nice and soft. There you go. So we're gonna put this on a plate here. And now our brisket. Look at this brisket here. So I'm gonna slice this in half. And we're gonna slice this as thin as possible. It's as thin as possible, that's what you want. Now for a thigh, if you have a meat slicer, you could cut it really thin, or you could freeze it and cut it a little bit thinner. For me, I like to do it the thigh bum way. So I'm just gonna slice it as thin as I can with a knife. And it's not gonna be that thin. But what I'm gonna do after is I'm gonna tenderize it by chopping it up. Chop it up a little bit, and this is gonna give it the closest texture that I'm gonna find closest to pho in Vietnam. Thai băm. I have my noodles here, and all I'm gonna do is just drench this in boiling water for about 20 to 30 seconds, guys, because it's fresh. I don't need that long, it's gonna cook. Just about 20 seconds in hot boiling water, and the fresh pho noodles should be good. This is where your noodle strainer comes into works magic. Suck this out. Make sure you get all the water out. Ta-da! Dump this into the bowl. Some sliced onions. Lots of green onions and cilantro. And we're gonna give this some meatballs. My sliced brisket. A little bit of Thai băm, some tendon, and this is your Pho Dac Biet, Thai Nam Gân Bò Duyên.
Perfect, perfect.
It is bright in the morning and now our pho is done. After about 10 to 12 hours, I can finally eat the pho. Nothing pairs up with a nice bowl of pho better than café soda. Here we have some nước béo hành trần. This is just beef fat with some green onion tips. Some people like this in their pho. An egg dropped in here, of course. And here is my bowl of pho with some bone marrow. Ha 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 ha, look at this. Look at that. Look at that bone marrow. Now you guys know I'm going for the egg. Look. I hope you guys like this video, and I want to thank you guys for watching. Now remember, everybody thinks they have the best pho. Bye bye.